every day.
Yeah,
Of course
it is brushing. So when you're doing these exercise rehabilitative exercises, that's brushing your teeth for your spine. Like
Yeah.
that's all it is. You have to upkeep it. But it's the one area that it's so hard to get this across, right? Like if even if we deal on the cardiovascular side of things and we said something like diabetes, most people can appreciate that if you're diagnosed with diabetes, you'll have lifestyle things that you have to do. You need to limit the intake of complex carbohydrates and simple carbohydrates in order to keep your blood sugar down, and you have to do this forever. And then you may have to take some medication to help, the insulin receptors and all these things. It's something that is very easily understood, and we get the point of management in those instances, or management with dental stuff. But for whatever reason, when it comes to pain and injury, there's this perception of cure, right? Where these things will go away and never bother you again.
Amount of time I have this.
No. Yeah, no, it's not. And especially if you've been diagnosed with chronic low back pain, the first component of that is chronic, which means it's been there for a very, very long time, and you now need to do the things. I have chronic spine pain. Does it bother me every single day? No, because I do the right things to manage it.
Chronic exercise.
Yeah, exactly. I continue to work on the core and all of those things in order to build it up, to keep it healthy. And most of the times it doesn't bother me. Does it ever flare up? Yeah, I had a flare up the other day. But I do the right things to manage it, to bring me back down to, I'm sitting here right now. I'm not in any discomfort. But I have chronic spine issues. I've had them since I was 12 or 11 years old, where I herniated a disc when I was very, very young. So I have these things. But if you manage them, you will do incredibly well with it, and you can live your life. And so the question becomes, if we look at case studies, why can there be people like you and I that have these chronic injuries, but yet we are able to live our lives, do the things we want to do? Right. And then you look at other people in other case studies where their whole life has fallen apart and they don't do anything anymore. And that's just a matter of the right management of it. And it's not necessarily that person's fault. Maybe this hasn't been brought to their attention. Maybe they just don't understand it fully. But that's what we're here for. We're trying to educate that these types of things need that type of exercise rehabilitative approach. And if you don't do it, then again, the outcome is very simple. It usually means that you continue living with the chronic ache, and it usually progresses, gets worse and worse and worse. And as it gets worse and worse and worse, each time that it flares up, it's likely more severe, lasts longer, never goes away quite the same. And I see that all the time. People that go through that, they continue to get worse and worse and worse. And then
the mental component gets worse and worse and worse.
Huge. And these people that have chronic pain will feel every single thing in their body, and they do that because when you are in chronic pain, you often become hyper-focused on anything. And if you and I sat here right now, John, and we started worrying about every little twinge that we might feel in our body as we sit here, and we amplify it, we'd be in a lot of pain. That's what chronic pain is. It's an amplification of signals that are oftentimes normal. One of the components of chronic pain is that there's potentially an absence of a true physical problem. And we move on to this thing called neuropathic pain, which means that the nerves and the neurology of our bodies have learned this experience.
Or missing limb syndrome, or what do they call it?
Yeah, like a phantom limb syndrome. Exactly. It's a learned syndrome. It's a behavioral thing, and that's why treating the mind is equally as important as treating the body. And when I say treating the mind, that doesn't mean medicating someone, but it means about changing your beliefs around different types of behaviors, and trying to, a component of it is acceptance. That's a huge thing where we see people and they sort of say, like, I can't believe that this happened to me. It's still going on. At a certain point, you have to accept it. I get it. I'm not trying to dismiss it, but I'm just saying that you doing that doesn't help you now. So a lot of the times it's about just accept it, move forward, and move on to the new things. Hurt versus harm education is a very important component of this. Distraction, huge. We just said that people that are hyper-focused, when you're hyper-focused, you're going to feel everything. And oftentimes when I meet these people in my office, I'll often ask them, if you go to like a birthday party or a wedding or whatever, how do you feel? And most of the times these people will say that when they're in some social setting where they're a little distracted, I tend to feel great. But then as soon as I get home,
not familiar surrounding.
As soon as I get home, and it's like the only difference is you're not getting home, you're getting back into your mind and you're focusing on your body. And when you're doing that, you're going to amplify everything that you feel. You're going to feel much, much worse. You're going to create, people will describe things like fogginess, but of course you'll have brain fogginess if all you're doing is focusing on every single sensation that's in your body. Do you know how complicated our bodies are? Do you know how many different sensations we are taking in at any given second? We're just not paying attention to it because we don't need to. But you can, and if you do, you are going to explode your mind with different types of stimuli and things that are out there in our worlds.
Because you mentioned, part of the therapy, how important distraction is. I mean, you used a comparison one time. You come in, your elbow is sore. Yeah, it's killing me. But if I stamp on your foot, that's what you're not going to feel for a second. Your elbow.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. Now we're not going to go that way.
No,